Hello, writers, and welcome to session 3 of the Write That Book Now writing course. And today we're talking about, I don't know what you're talking about. We're talking about structure. So, the structure of a story, whether it's a short story, a novel, a non-fiction about some particular issue that you're strongly passionate about. It might be a memoir. There are there are structures that we can use to make the story more engaging and to draw our readers in and to give our readers the deepest experience they can. Because we want them to sit down with a book for 5 minutes and then suddenly find themselves 2 hours later still reading. How did this happen? I can't put this book down. It's so good. And a lot of that engagement, shall we call it, is down to the structure. So, for example, a lot of people who are writing, say, a non-fiction where someone's been through some kind of trauma, some kind of negative stuff in their life, and they've come out of it somehow. They've found a solution, whether it's a health thing or a finance thing or a family thing or whatever, careers. And often they will start out talking about themselves. And I would suggest that's the wrong thing to do, because the reader doesn't know you until he gets into the book. So the idea is to talk about the reader and get them to engage as if they had the problem that the writer had. So rather than go on and on and on about your childhood and the da-da-da and this happened and then that happened and then this happened, that can come later. When we're writing about something that's deeply personal to us, but we want to share it with others, then we need to bring the others into the story. And we can always engage them by talking about how would it feel if you lived in a body that was never free of pain? How would it feel? And try and explain the feeling so that they are getting that feeling. And once they're engaged in that, once they're emotionally and mentally, almost spiritually engaged in how it is to be as you are or as you were, then you can talk about the things that did happen. So there's different ways of putting the same information, and we don't have to just do it in this straight line, tell my story from beginning to end. We can bounce backwards and forwards, timelines, and using different emotions and feelings and ideas. So that's just a little example of structure. Now, there's a character you might have heard of called Joseph Campbell. He's now died, so I can't get you to talk to him. But anyway, he studied stories, myths, fables, whatever, over thousands of years, the ones that have been written, and what people engaged with, and how we pass on information, how we pass on that deep knowledge. And what he discovered was what he called as the monotheism, whereas there's, in a sense, that there's this one story structure, the way that people tell stories, the way that they engage, and the stories that last for hundreds, maybe thousands of years are those that he said follow this structure. And there are, I've got a list of 7 different story structures, but I'm going to focus on Joseph Campbell's one. So what he has is he calls it the hero's journey, and he has 12 stages. And for example, Star Wars, George Lucas wrote the Star Wars based entirely on the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell. It was quite successful. So Joseph Campbell, he starts out with the ordinary world. So someone's just minding their own business, getting on with their life, doing the ordinary stuff. That's the ordinary world. So we can explain that. It might only just be 2 paragraphs. It might be 1 chapter. How Henry is an accountant and he's just being an accountant and whatever. Or Marjorie's tried relationships and they don't work, and so she's decided not to do relationships. She's just getting on and happily being on her own. That could be a romance type start. Or it could be a thriller and someone's just doing their own thing. If you think of the Liam Neeson type movies where he's always losing someone, usually a wife or a daughter, and so he's just having a lovely time with either or both of them. That's the ordinary world. And then there comes the call to adventure. And in the Liam Neeson example, that might be suddenly his daughter's gone off to the toilet or something and she hasn't come back. So that's the call. Something happens, a defining moment. And so there's this ordinary, and then there's a glitch. Something goes wrong. And in a romance, that might be this girl who's decided, no, I'm being on my own. I'm happy and I've got some friends and a lovely job and da-da-da. I'm not doing romance anymore. And then she ends up somewhere and looks across the crowded room, as they do. And there's a look from this chap. And something goes on in here and something goes on in here, whatever. So there's the call to action. So that call to action is a moment out of the ordinary life. And so there's a call, and so there's possibility. So what can Liam Neeson do? His daughter, he could go to the police. He could do this, he could do that. He could sit and wait for his daughter. Or he could leap up and go find what happened. He'd rush into the toilet and get all furious and whatever. So an opportunity for a moment to change the ordinary life happens. And then there's the next moment is a refusal to the call. So this girl looking across this crowded room and meets eyes with this handsome chap, and they smile at each other, and no, not doing that, not doing that. So she turns back to her friends and carries on, pretends the man's not there. Well, Liam Neeson, does nothing, or he passes the idea on to the police. He doesn't do anything about it himself. So whether it's thrillers or rom-com, romance, or any other genre, we have the ordinary, then something happens, and then we have a choice. And the initial choice is often do nothing about it. And as we know in life, when the universe, when God, whatever we call it, want us to make a change and we refuse, we might trip over and stub our toe. The next time we refuse, we might, I don't know, pull a hamstring. The next time we might break a leg. Eventually, when change is demanded from our soul, the pain gets more and more. And that's just kind of life. So we can do this in our stories. And eventually this girl, I'm not going to talk to this handsome man over there. And then she goes back to work and carries on, and then she bumps into him in the street, or I don't know. If she's at university, she drops her books and he happens to be there and he picks them up for her. So she's sort of forced to engage in some way. So the call to action is often refused. And that's what we do. So if I don't know, whatever job we're in, maybe we're a lawyer and we're sick of being a lawyer, bored stiff, hate the job, whatever it is, working in a factory, something, and we really want to do something else, something that's been a dream. An artist, I don't know, fly an aeroplane, be a writer, something else. And this idea of doing what we really want to do keeps coming up, and people keep suggesting it somehow, or opportunities arise to go and learn to be a pilot, or to start writing a book, or to start sculpting, or to start, I don't know, being an accountant, something you've always dreamed to do. And we refuse. We say no, and we stick with what we don't like doing. because it's too scary. The change is scary. How am I going to survive? And da 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 da. I've got a comfortable job. I don't like my colleagues. I don't like the work, but it brings in an income, and I can just go to work and come home again. But this idea, this kernel of an idea, keeps popping up to be a writer, a pilot, I don't know, a funeral director, anything else in what you're doing. And eventually there's a moment where you can't say no. You've just got to go and do that thing. And that might mean resistance from family and friends and your own internal dialogue. So that's what happens to us in life. And so if we can mirror our books to reflect that, that's what happens to our characters. An opportunity comes along, and we don't always go, yes, the first time. We don't always leap into a relationship or a new career, or, I don't know, a new health regime, or go travel when we first think about it. We ponder it, oh, no, maybe I won't. It's too, oh, no, I'll think about it. So that's the ordinary life, the first impulse, then the refusal to accept that. And then the fourth is meeting a mentor. So when we are resistant to something, and I, back in 1993, I think it was, I was depressed. I'd just been made redundant for the fourth time, had no idea what to do with my life. The only thing I could think of was going back to the old run of being an accountant again, and it just gave me physical pain, the idea of being an accountant. And then I met my mentor. I actually physically met somebody. I bumped into this guy on the street, and he looked really interesting because I didn't know much about hippies and any of that kind of new age stuff. But anyway, this guy, long tails, well, they're called ponytails, and a beard, and the swami looking chap in New Zealand. And so he was running a meditation group. Oh, I really wanted to do that. There was no reason. I just wanted to do this meditation. I've never done meditation before. I didn't know what it was about, but something in my soul said, you've got to do it. But I knew there'd be resistance from my wife at the time. Anyway, I thought about it, and eventually a week later I went back to Anthony Life, as his name was, and booked in. And then, of course, there was resistance from my wife, spending all that money to go and sit around and do nothing. Anyway, so I met my mentor, and that meeting helped push me into what I needed to do. And so I did the meditation, and that led to becoming a writer and so on. Long story short. So when we are resistant, the universe usually sends us somebody else who makes it easier, who makes it doable for us. Because doing something new on our own is, whoo, can I do this? So a mentor will come along. And a mentor might be a movie. It might be a book that we pick up and go, this is how it's done, or an instruction manual, or something else will come along outside of us. Generally, the mentor is a person, but it may not be. It might be a course, a writing course. So that's the mentor, and then we cross the first threshold. We make that first decision to step forward. And for me, that was doing the meditation course. Well, no, before that, it was telling my wife that I wanted to do the meditation course. That was really scary. Our marriage was on the rocks at the time, and I knew she wouldn't be into meditation. So anyway, I did that. And I remember, and I won't go on to that because I can't remember his name, the first guy to sail around the world, an English guy who was a cartographer in England and in Cambridge, I think. I'll get his name in a moment. And afterwards, because he had all sorts of incredible dramas, financial and then huge risks, and he could have died every single day that he was sailing around the world on his own, first solo yachtsman to sail around the world. And of course, afterwards, people ask him, gosh, what was the most terrifying, most risky experience that you had in all that time you're on the sea? And he said, the hardest moment was not on the sea. The hardest moment was standing up from my desk and walking down the corridor to tell my boss that I'm going to give this job up and I'm going to sail around the world. Making that first decision. So Francis Chichester, and this is what he said. That first decision to get up out of his seat and go and tell his boss, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go and sail around the world, so I need to leave this job. The funny thing was, his boss just sat there and stared at him for a moment and said, that is the most amazing thing I could imagine. Let me help you. And his boss was his first sponsor and an amazing support. And so that's what happens. A mentor will turn up. And so in our books, a mentor can turn up for our characters. So they're resistant to this thing that's going on, whatever it is. And Liam Neeson might, I don't know, meet somebody else he might have been an ex-policeman that he knows, and he's got some contacts and skills that he will help him. I don't know. Or a friend might come along to this girl who's not going to get into romance and just tells her, what you can do. And it's sort of, let's just go and have a coffee with the guy. Just take it easy. Don't, this is not romance. This is just having a coffee. Maybe that, a friend talks to somebody. So that's the mentor that turns up. And after the mentor turns up, we then say yes. We take the first little step. We have no idea how big this journey is going to be. We think the little step is it. But the little step is possibly 10%, 3%, something of what's going to happen, but we don't know the other 90, 95% that's going. So that's what happens to our characters. They take a little step, and that little step leads to another, and that leads to another, and that leads to another, and so on. And so, of course, once we step out and do things get in the way. People object to what we're doing. Money is a problem. Maybe it stretches our health situation somehow. Maybe we have to go and learn something new, a new language or a new techniques, and that's hard work. So there's always the tests and the allies. So there's positive and negative things turn up. And that's what happens to us, so it happens to our characters. And so eventually we may not know what our goal is, but often we do. Once we step into it, this is what I really want to do. I really want to be a pilot. I really want to be a funeral director. I want to do this thing. I want to sail around the world. I want to, I don't know, plant 1 million trees. Something comes up and we know, here's a goal, but initially we refuse to accept the goal because it seems too much. I can't sail around the world. I can't plant 1 million trees. I can't become an international speaker. That we refuse to acknowledge the drive that's inside of us because it seems too much. However, once we start and we're gathering mentors and skills and techniques and ideas and contacts, it starts to become doable, starts to become realistic. And so we, as Joseph Campbell says, we step into the cave. We get so close to our goal. We've now accepted it and we can do it. And we've got the finance for our yacht to sail around the world, or we're setting the test and we're doing the training as a pilot, or we do whatever we're doing. And we're moving forward. And then there's a road back. Things get tough. No, I can't do this. So we vacillate. Things get tough. We've got to give up. No, and someone pushes us forward, whatever. There's this backwardy, forwardy thing. And then eventually the last one is what he calls return with the elixir. The elixir is the elixir of life, the thing that gives us life. which is usually an achievement of some sort. And it might be getting married to this person that we were not going to get involved with. Might be on our cycle trip around Australia or whatever it is. We come back with the golden fleece, as Jason did. We achieve our goal. So those are the 12 steps that Joseph Campbell, I think I missed a couple, but that's the process that happens to us in life. So if we can write our books in a way that parallels our life, that mirrors the kind of experiences we have, people will identify though with the story. We all know about resistance. We all know about people turning up and helping us. We all know about dreams that we think are too big and then they start becoming real. We all know about that. So when our character goes through that, people will engage. This is real. This is actually what happened to me. And so we can become the character in some kind of way. So I gave six other types of structures. And as I said at the start, this is art. You don't have to use a structure. You don't sit down and go, George Lucas did when he wrote Star Wars. He went through this. The ordinary world. Okay, number one. Number two is the call to adventure. So he wrote Star Wars exactly on this template. You can do that. And it can be successful. Or if you perhaps are a pantster type of writer, you might just start writing. And you may find yourself writing in the structure. It might just fall out in that way. Or once you've got to the end of all of that intuitive writing, shall we say, from your muses, you can then start moving the story around a bit to fit with a structure that's more aligned with the way that humans are, with the way we behave, with the way we live our lives imperfectly. So you don't have to use this strict structure. I mean, there's 6 other structures. One of them is particularly for movies. One of them is much more shortened. It's got 5 sections. And nowadays, there is a bit of a fashion, if you like, that people have been asked to, instead of having too much of the ordinary life, they're immediately thrust into the incident that sparked it all off. Suddenly, boom, boom, boom. And then we can kind of step back into the ordinary life might happen in chapter 3. So someone slapped in the face and, I don't know, shot in the leg or something from, the first sentence. Crash, bang, and the world goes, so they have no choice. They've got to do something about it. So that's another structure. So just bearing in mind these different structures and thinking about whether it's a non-fiction or fiction, whether it's a romance, whether it's a thriller, whether it's I don't know what other sort of stories are there. They can all fit the structure. And so your homework, my darling friends, is to write a story of around 500 words. I'm not saying it must be exactly or under. It's not a writing competition. I'll just give you a guide, around 500 words of a story that takes in the first 3 parts of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. So your story will start with the ordinary life, whatever's going on for Fred or Mabel or whoever, and then something happens, and then there's resistance. So just practicing those first 3 steps. And so just to give you an example, I did my exercise, and I might have gone a bit far because my short story could actually be it, or it could be the start of a novel. So it's ended up being probably all of those stages, all of the 12. Anyway, so just to give you an idea, this is what I wrote in my incredible wisdom, and enjoy this. Arthur Soames had a wife whose movements he could predict with unnerving accuracy. Monday, vacuum floors, clean toilet, and roast pork for dinner. Tuesday, wash towels and sheets, her tapestry group, and then steak and chips for dinner. Wednesday, wash clothes, clean kitchen, and chicken Kiev for dinner, and so on. It never occurred to him, an accountant, to change anything. He was happy with their routine. Well, that was until he realized computers were infecting his occupation and could take over his job. He resisted these newfangled gadgets for years until he acknowledged his dwindling clientele meant his expenses were more than his income. He felt hot and bothered at that thought, but resisted telling Gloria. He knew what she was like when her mother died, and his manly pride couldn't admit his failure as a man and then upset his fragile wife. But these pesky computers didn't go away, and so he rehearsed a speech at times, many times, fortified himself with a 3-sugar cocoa drink, and stormed to the front door with all the effrontery of a penguin defending its nest. However, that effrontery evaporated like a politician's promise as Gloria met him in the hallway, wearing black heels, black slacks, and white business shirt with a coloured logo on the pocket. His mouth hung open like a broken purse, and she smiled as she'd never done before, like she had stolen the last cookie. "Can we have a chat, Arthur?" she asked, waving towards the table that had been set with teacups and a platter of several biscuits. Definitely not the Yorkshire pudding he was expecting. He complied dumbly, with 1,000 thoughts whirling around in his brain. Is this the "I've had enough" divorce talk? The "I've found another man" talk? The "I've discovered I'm a lesbian" talk? The "I've been diagnosed with cancer and have 3 months to live" talk? First thing, Arthur, she said as she sat and poured tea, is that this change is all good for both of us. No bad surprises. He nodded dumbly while his brain wondered how any change could be good. "See, since my mother's funeral, I've been struggling." "You have?" "Yes, Arthur, and I didn't know how to tell you how sad I was and how paralyzed I felt." "I know that. Please let me finish, Arthur." "Oh, right." His brain had shut down now, and now that it was out of questions. Despite the paralysis, there was the urge to go on as it hit me that we only have one life, one chance. We don't get a rerun. Oh, is she considering suicide? "I also know you're stuck in a rut with your business and need space to step back and rethink," said Gloria. Oh gosh, he didn't know he needed that. "See, over the last 6 months, I've been doing a real estate course." "You didn't ask me," he said plaintively. "I knew you wouldn't agree, so I used my meager savings and yesterday qualified, and this evening I have my first client." "You're a real estate agent." He tried to squeeze this new occupation into the small box he'd built for her in his mind. It didn't fit. "Yes, naturally," she smiled gloriously, and she really did look beautiful. "Why naturally?" "Well, what's my name, Arthur?" "Gloria Soames." "Oh, that's what I'll be selling. Gloria's Homes." They laughed together for the first time since the funeral. So that's my little first 3 steps in the hero's journey. Now your turn. Email your story to me, and then we'll have something to talk about. So I wish you well. Have a wonderful day and have some fun writing.